On liberation, I was 5 years old.
And where were you when the island was liberated?
I was on Liberation Day itself. I was on the Weybridge, yeah, with my dad. That was the first time that I'd, I'd met American soldiers. There was American with the British there, and I had a piece of chocolate from them. It was lovely. First piece of chocolate.
And what was your most vivid memory of this day?
Uh, just being down there amongst the crowd, I was given the chance to actually go on one of the tanks that were there. So I was quite privileged.
And how did you celebrate?
I can't remember that. Yeah.
Did you have a favourite or worst food during the occupation?
Yes, pumpkin soup. We had to eat pumpkin soup because we were very, even though we were on a farm, we were very short in food. My mum was too good. She actually gave food to neighbours rather than ourselves.
And what memory stays with you most during the occupation years?
Well, but the first I can recount was D-Day. I was standing under a big chestnut tree at the end of the drive, and I looked up at the sky, and I could see the sky full of aircraft. And this went on right through the day and through the night. That particular night was almost like daylight with the gunfire, trying to shoot these aircraft down. In the kitchen with neighbours, listening to the little crystal set that we had there. And the Germans marched up the drive. Somebody obviously had told them we were using one. They marched up the drive, there's about 20 of them, came through the door, and my dad didn't have time to get rid of the crystal set or the battery. So he put the battery in the sewing machine that we had there and put a newspaper on the top of the crystal set. The Germans searched the house from top to bottom, including the attic, and they never lifted the newspaper. Yes, that's quite amazing. The other thing I can recall was when I was outside with my mum. We were near the pigsties, and there was a German soldier sitting on the hedge there, and he was eating grass. And the poor chap, no sooner had he eaten grass, he was being sick, and then he'd start all over again eating grass. He was just a young German soldier. He was obviously starved.
End of the harbour, and the Tommies were coming off, and we're walking up, we're hanging on to the Tommies, and what I remember particularly, for some reason, there was he had a white enamel mug on the back of his, on the back of his kit bag, and it was bouncing as he was walking, and I remember that. I was walking along and I was holding on to him, like grim death, as if it was, it's after that I don't really remember. I don't know what happened to the rest of my family. We must have met up sometime later on in the evening. This is in the morning I'm talking about. But everybody was so, I don't know, yes.
Did you have a favourite or worst food during the occupation?
Did I have favourite?
Or worst food during the occupation?
Oh, well, none of it was very good, but I'm just trying to think of favourite food. I didn't have anything favourite because although we were farmers, there was a German, what do you call them, a chap came in the stables to watch your milking, and I think that we were only allowed to keep the same amount as other people. The Germans took the remainder, but I think Dad cheated a little bit. I don't think he milked the cows completely. I've got a feeling, I think I remember hearing him tell somebody that after the Germans had gone, he went back. It's not too good for the cows, but there you are. But a favourite, well, the only favourite food I can think of is we grew fruit, raspberries and raspberries, blackcurrants, I think, and that. I think we still did during the war, can't remember too much.
What memory stays with you most about the occupation years?
Oh, there's so many. Well, one of them is the most dramatic, I suppose, was the day the Germans arrived on June the 28th, I went to the collegiate school in Colombery, and I went to school. Oh yes, my brother was in the militia, Jersey militia, and they disbanded because Jersey was going to be declared an open town. So he went off with his pregnant wife. That was their wedding anniversary. A few days before the militia went off to England, on a boat, and that was the end we saw of that. And then after that, I'm just trying to think. Yes. So after that, there was going to be an empty house in Samray Lane, which was my brother and his wife, and he'd done it all up because they were newly married. So Dad asked some friends of his in town, Mr. and Mrs. Beagle, would they go and stay at the house, just so the Germans wouldn't. So on that Friday in June, I went after school. Instead of coming home, I went to Samray, to Green Island, to stay at Runnymede, this house, and I just got there and put my Panama on a peg in the little passageway, and Mrs. Beagle said, come quickly to the door. We got to the door, standing side by side. A German plane came down so low we could see the pilot, and he fired 2 shots. One of them came just at the side of me, and it took a piece of wood about that long out of the skirting board. And years afterwards, because I went to live in England, I came back to Jersey and lived at the house, and I said to the man, leave that, don't fill that in, And the other bullet had gone through the bedroom window, which was wide open, it was a sash window, and gone right through a folded up bedspread, So there were 2 bullets. And, I didn't know. Well, it didn't hit me, but I realized, I know what, the piece of wood from there landed on my Panama, which on the other side.
One heresy. 10. Trinity, we lived at Trinity. Yeah. Of the day. No memories whatsoever, but the night before, we were on top of a beachfield house, and we could see all the liberation boats out in the bay, all lit up, which was quite a sight at the time, yes. I don't remember a thing about what we celebrated, to be quite honest. It's not a memory of mine, I'm afraid. Sugar beet comes to mind. Yes, because I used to grind sugar beet and make various either drinks or sugar or what have you. I think the memory that stays with me most was the fact that my father was put in prison because he was accused of putting water in his milk. Thankfully, he was bailed by one of his brothers, and within 600 or 700 yards of the farmhouse, we had an anti-aircraft battery with 40 or 50 troops, and we suspected they were the ones who were putting the water in the milk. And thankfully, we caught them doing it, and therefore my father was exonerated from that accusation.
The day itself, it was so hot, and we stood at the top there watching them, that all the back of my legs were red, almost like a lobster, because we'd stood so long up there. Yes.
So how did you celebrate?
Well, how do we celebrate? I think I went out in the evening with some friends, and we went dancing, I think, in the evening. Yes, because there was a little cafe. It was Italian, and they were allowed to open, you see, because they were Italian all along. Yes, and we went there for the evening, and they had a band, and I went with a friend of mine, and we spent the evening sort of dancing away.
And did you have a favourite food during the occupation years?
Favourite food? Well, I don't know really, because we didn't have much of anything.
Or a worst food?
Sorry?
Or did you have a worst food you didn't like?
Well, we had so much swede at the end. We were eating swede for breakfast, dinner and tea that for a long time I couldn't face one, you know. And we used to make things out of potatoes. We'd make a rice pudding out of potatoes, and you grated it and put some milk on, and that was quite nice, you know.
And what memory stays with you the most about the occupation years?
Well, I suppose because I was young, you took everything as it came, sort of thing, you know. And but when we went to school, we went at 10 o'clock in the morning because we were 2 hours ahead of time, and it was dark, you see. And in the end, we didn't have any lighting either. We had no lighting, and very electricity. The water was cut off. And we were, you know, in a pretty bad way by the time the Vega came.